know this is a big theme in the long game. If you could sort of talk about the importance of really having a plan and how to do strategic thinking when it comes to our careers.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's true, obviously, that for most of us as individuals, it's very hard to see the forest for the trees when it's your career you're talking about. Everything feels kind of unique and individual and just complicated, and that is true for everyone. I mean, part of why I wrote my first book, Reinventing You, was just feeling like, it's not obviously that there weren't career resources out there exactly, but it all felt so amorphous and so disorganized to me. Yeah. I felt like I was having to figure it all out on my own, which can be a large existential burden. And so I wanted to try to create something that was a little bit more of a structured pathway so that other people didn't feel like they were having to do it all solo as well, because a lot is at stake, right? I mean, income, of course, is at stake, but also there's a lot of matters of self-identity. If you've always thought of yourself as being an X and then suddenly you aren't anymore, it can be a little bit discomforting to try to find a new identity that you feel comfortable settling into. And in fact, one of the things that I've seen is that oftentimes our identity has a lag compared to our reality, sometimes of several years, in terms of how you think of yourself and even talk about yourself with other people. In Reinventing You, I profiled one woman who became the head of an education nonprofit. And literally years after she took this job, she was at a cocktail party and her husband overheard her and she was introducing herself, and the person said, "Well, what do you do?" And she said, "Well, I'm a teacher." And the woman said, "Oh, what do you teach?" And then, the person said, sort of had to stop and be like, "Oh, well, I mean, I don't literally teach now. I mean, I kind of run this nonprofit," which is, I mean, honestly, a completely different field. And afterwards, her husband was like, "Why are you still introducing yourself as a teacher?" And she honestly just hadn't really thought about it, that in her mind, that's still where she was, even though the reality was very different. So we have to just recognize and meet people there that this is a process. And I think we feel bad sometimes that, everybody else has it figured out. Well, the truth is, of course, not everybody has it figured out. I am a really big fan of just being gentle with ourselves and understanding that, we don't necessarily have to have the 10-year vision, the 20-year vision. It's kind of like driving in the fog. And as long as you can keep identifying the next best step, you will be able to get there eventually, even if you don't quite know what the final destination is.
Well, it's interesting, picking up on that last bit about driving in the fog, is things keep changing. There's all, kind of the next thing I wasn't expecting just happened. And so what was it, Mike Tyson, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the nose. And, and it's kind of the same thing, right? I mean, sometimes these things happen to us. But having said that, maybe you talked earlier about this kind of amorphous and to bring more structure to it. Do you mind just elaborating on what that structure might look like? Yeah,
absolutely. So in Reinventing You, I lay out kind of a roughly 3-part process of thinking about your professional reinvention. And the first part is just really kind of getting clear on, what is your brand now in the marketplace, so to speak. Yeah. Like how are you known? How are you thought of by other people? Because number one, there's a lot of power in understanding that, because it enables you to kind of lean into your strengths and harness what you are known for and what other people think, oh yeah, that's a special talent. But also it's useful because it can sometimes identify gaps. If you, for instance, really want to get promoted into a leadership role, but you're viewed as like a super tactical person, it's not that that's a bad thing. That's actually a perfectly good thing to be viewed as, but it's not entirely complementary to a senior level position, which is meant to be more strategic. So you just realize like, oh, okay, I mean, it's not terrible to be thought of as a good tactician, but it's not really appropriate for where you want to go. So getting your bearings is step number one in understanding where you are now. Number two is getting clearer on sort of defining the brand that you want. So it's beginning to create the vision, doing enough research to at least have a preliminary sense of where you're heading, so that essentially, you can triangulate the path between where you want to go and where you are now. It enables you, if you have those two data points on a map, the plan kind of writes itself in a lot of ways. Oh, okay, if I really need to be viewed as more strategic, or oh, if I really want to get a job and move to California, then I guess, oh, I need to start networking with more people who live in California, or whatever it is. But you can work backwards from that future identity that you want. And then, finally, once you kind of get there, once you start establishing that traction and getting to the place you want, I think an important part that often gets overlooked is that people sometimes think that career change or professional reinvention is like a one-time event. And I like to beat the drum that, we need to understand this is not a one-time thing and then it's over forever, right? Because you keep meeting people, you keep interacting with people, they keep formulating, opinions about you. And so we need to continually be cognizant about the messages we're sending. Now, it doesn't mean we have to get paranoid or get in our heads about, oh, in this given moment, what micro signals am I sending? Like, it's not like, oh, it's this, terrible burden that we have to take on at all times. But it just means we need to be a little bit smarter and a little bit more thoughtful on an ongoing basis to make sure we don't get slack, like, okay, if you really want to be known as like, Bob's an innovator or something like that. Well, okay. Are you making a point when you're connecting with people to talk about subjects related to the future or related to innovation? Are you making a point, at least periodically on social media, to be posting about, what's coming next, or sharing articles about exciting new technologies? Like those are the little things that can help reinforce, oh, yes, Bob is known for innovation.
Yeah. So, gosh, tons of things we could even unpack in all of that, because when we're working with clients, they're often kind of like, well, Dorie, the thing I've done the longest is this. Maybe the thing I'm most known for is this. The thing I'm actually the most interested in is something else. And so, like, which one do I choose? And I'd say that's a false choice, because that's like saying I've got milk, eggs, flour, and sugar. Which one should I be? And we talk about baking a cake. Like, how do you synthesize those things and create this very unique value proposition that somebody's like, wait a minute, you've been a journalist and a campaign manager and a divinity student and an authority on career stuff. Like, how do you bring all that together to create this really unique value proposition and then go identify in the marketplace who's looking for something like that? And so I can be very intentional with my networking at that point, back to your point, like California or whatever. Now it's got some direction and some purpose and some intent behind it, and not getting lost in the, oh my gosh, which one do I be? I can only be one.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, Bob. That's exactly right. There is so much black and white thinking when it comes to careers. And, the truth is, most people you talk to, like, not people like you who are providing guidance, but I mean, like, the people in our lives, frankly, are very uncreative about things. People often, one of the points that I've discovered, which is a little ironic and sometimes a little bit sad, and we just have to brace ourselves for it, is that we often assume that our greatest supporters are going to be our friends and family. But often that's not the case, because it is in their self-interest to perpetuate the status quo. And they sometimes get worried if you are doing something that they view as disruptive to them or their quality of life. I mean, they're not going to frame it that way, obviously. They're going to be like, no, I'm just concerned about you. I don't want you to be disappointed, but it's like, really, they're just like, well, what am I going to do if he's not making any money anymore, And so we have to be aware that we may be getting pushback from people that we love and trust and that theoretically have our best interests at heart. And they probably do in a lot of ways, but it just means that we actually have to be strong enough to recognize that we need a little bit of a promotional campaign that we run internally with our own stakeholders to get their buy-in, so that they understand that a career change that we're making is going to be really important to us, and that it's something that they should want to. They should hopefully get on board with as well.